Welcome back. Welcome back to the inner circle. I had promised you, I told you that I was going to make up for lost time and all the episodes that I did not provide over the course of especially last week. But here we are. I will have made up with this particular installment, and we are going to go back to our regular schedule of 3 to 4 watches per day. We are going to talk about the Universal Genève Polerouter, which was a very inspirational design by a young Gérald Jantin, which was commissioned when he was merely 23 years old by Universal, one of the leading Swiss watch companies of the time. They were also suppliers to SAS, Scandinavian Airline Systems, which at that time completed this signal achievement of an intercontinental flight, specifically between Copenhagen and Los Angeles, that went through the polar route, hence the name of the watch, Polerouter, which was actually spelled with an A on early iterations. One of the most beautiful things about this particular model is basically the sheer diversity of its variations. I'm just going to talk about three of those today. But before that, I do want to make a small note. If you want to learn about complicated universal watches, there's a very good book by an Italian gentleman by the name Pietro Giuliano Sala. The book, unfortunately, has been out of print for several years now, with copies fetching as much as $500 or more on the secondary market. Thankfully, he has made available an online version, which in fact comes, I believe, with even additional content. So do check out his Instagram account, which goes by the same name as his website, which is Libro Universal, www.librouniversal.it. When it comes to resources for the pole router and for basically time only Universal Genève watches, those resources are much more meager. However, there has been for the longest time a very reliable and I believe largely crowdsourced in the sense that it's is really a community of people that provide information for this website. There has been a pole router reference website where you can actually go through all the different reference tables with that are actually divided to um, ladies models, stainless steel models, 18 karat gold models, and the different calibers that have been used in Universal Genève pole routers, as well as the bracelets and strap buckles that go with each reference. This is really a great website. I'm not going to go as far to say that it's exhaustive, but it is so varied and it is so detailed in certain ways that it's hard to overdo it. As you can see, you have all these entries with reference number, sub-reference number that is matched with a dial color, what the original handset was, what kind of logo it carried, whether there was luminous material on the dial, whether the crown was signed or not, and if it was signed, what was it signed with, in this case, a shield, the dimensions of the case, on and on and on, what kind of movement was used, um, and then their entire galleries of those reference numbers, right, where you at least have a few different examples of each reference number. It's an incredible website. If that wasn't enough, more recently, um, a new website emerged by the Polerouter, by the name thepolerouter.com, which actually is about an upcoming book, which is going to be the first book to focus exclusively on the Université Genève Polerouter, to celebrate its diversity, its history, as well as its original design. There's also an Instagram account that goes with this. I think there was kind of a preview party last October in New York in collaboration with Analog Shift. I'm going to include all these different links in the message that will bring this video to your mailbox. The book is going to come out in the fall. September 1st is the current date. I hope they can stick to that date. I don't actually know the person behind this account, the person behind this book. So I do apologize, but I'm trying to give due credit precisely because I have learned a lot uh, from um, from Salah's book about complicated UG watches, from that Polerouter reference website in terms of the Polerouters. And as much as I thought always that that reference web page was behind the book project as well, right when I was researching for this recording and right when I was putting together this recording, I basically realized that's not really true. So credit where it's due. I haven't really seen the work that went into this book. I wasn't part of the preview party at all, but it's a very nicely designed Instagram account. That's all I can say at this point. And I look forward to getting the book once it comes out. Now, without further ado, let's get into some of the less common Polerouter references. I chose three pieces that are sporty in the extreme because the other designs are quite more familiar. If you would like me to go through certain variations, I can do two more installments at least very easily. I can do one installment for stainless steel and one for precious metal. So do let me know. But we're going to start with this. This is a later reference from the 70s. The watch with its cushion case in 36 millimeters has baby Panerai vibes. I chose the one in the best condition. I have also glimpsed another version with the blue dial, which is very striking, that is presented on a generic strap, but is in a lesser condition, I have to say, even though it is much cheaper. So I didn't share that. Once again, if you want that link, please feel free to reach out to me directly. This piece is built on the later and improved version of the Université Genève micro rotor movement. 1-69 and has this beautiful two-tone dial with a navy chapter ring and a vertically brushed silver gray center dial, as well as multifaceted index markers for the hours, pencil hands that are themselves loomed, and sweep seconds hand that is centrally deployed, and of course the iconic trapezoid framed date window at 3 o'clock. The piece is on a rather beautiful condition. If not impeccable, you would certainly rate it in 90% or so. The bracelet, which is original to the watch, looks very nice. Really incredible piece. If these pieces were, by some freak accident of history, 40 or 42 millimeters, I'm sure they would be all the rage in the pre-owned market, in the vintage market for watches. But I think even as they are, if you have a smaller wrist, this is an incredibly stylish and very original sports watch to have. And it carries over elements of Gerard original design into a new era for Universal Genève before they had to really transform themselves at the onset of the quartz crisis. Beautiful piece put up here by a private seller out of Hungary with the byte now price 3,582 in US dollars, but they remain open to negotiation, so feel free to send in a bid and perhaps you can snag it for even less. The second piece that is slightly more expensive is again in the dive watch genre, and it carries that branding this time on its sleeve. Polerouter sub with a beautiful black dial, a crosshair in the middle that has faded into an almost faint shade of pink. You can say the same about the Genève signature, even though the initial logo remains quite bright in its shade of fire red. One of the things I love about this particular watch is how beat up it is, even though it is completely original. The loom pip has fallen off. The bezel insert is quite scratched, but the watch retains all its character, including the faded and expired tritium luminous material, the beautiful dial that is decorated with Art Deco numerals in the quarters, except for 3 o'clock, where it has the iconic trapezoid opening for the dates. And in this case, the watch even has the original crystal, which has the matching magnifier for the date window in that same geometric shape. The watch comes roughly from 1965 and is seemingly in an unpolished condition. Again, I really love the design, and I think the condition is very authentic. As you can see, this is another way to recognize that original crystal because it has that secret signature in the middle, right above the hand stack. Incredible piece, really. If, I would have been getting it, I think, if it weren't missing that pip. I'm sure that would have put um, another 1,000 or something on the price tag, but would have been still worth it. A beautiful watch. Of course, I would have matched it with a Tropic rubber strap or maybe a NATO strap. But anyway, that's a very small detail. It's listed here by a professional dealer out of España for less than $6,000, 5,810 in US dollars. They remain open to negotiation, so feel free to submit a lowball bid and try to snatch this in a fire sale. I highly doubt that they will give you much room to negotiate because it is really in a very good, honest condition. And really, the only thing that it's really missing is in terms of the luminous material, maybe. The way that the luminous material in the hands has aged is a little greenish. That's not entirely desirable. The luminous pip is missing. That's not so great, but everything else is pretty much bang on perfect. And the final one for today. This is perhaps an even rarer version of the Polerouter sub. I don't know the specific details of the story, but I have heard that this was a mil-spec watch. I have seen a couple of examples with the proper case-back engravings to go with it. Although in this day and age and in this world, you never know what kind of fakes and forgeries people come up with. So I'm not gonna, um, put too much emphasis on that. But I have to say, this is a very attractive example of that mid-century diver watch aesthetic. It might not have all the technical specs of the Blancpain 50 Fathoms. It might not have all that and the marketing machine that the Rolex Submariner had behind it. But I think in terms of the design and in the way that it integrates the inner rotatable timing bezel, which is graduated for the first 20 minutes with these fat pencil hands and the classic black dial with generous amounts of luminous material that has now aged into an eggshell color with, again, the good, honest condition of the case, the early version of the micro rotor caliber 218-9. This is a very attractive watch. Again, if you are a high-flying collector of dive watches, this is something that properly belongs to your collection, perhaps the next step would be the chronograph version of this particular watch, this particular aesthetic, which goes by the name Space Compacts. I will come back to that in a future episode. But in terms of a collection of modern dive watches, in terms of a vintage collection, I should say, this would be the missing piece for many. You're looking at Universal Genève Polerouter sub from around 1960s. And in my eyes, it really belongs to that pantheon where where the Rolex Submariner and the Blancpain 50 Fathoms already occupy their rightful places. Even the font on the rotational bezel, I think, deserves a certain admiration with all those serif markings. What a beautiful piece. This one, for this once, there's no room for negotiation. It is posted on Chrono 24 by a professional dealer out of Switzerland. And the fixed price is 10,861 in US dollars. I think I've taken enough of your time for this episode. If you have any further questions about the variations of the Polerouter, if you are asking for further installments, further episodes, and other variations of the Universal Genève Polerouter, please don't hesitate to write to me here on Patreon. You can also find me on Instagram at young.brando. And of course, you can always write to me via email at lordhellespont5 @gmail.com, lordhellespont@gmail.com. I'll see you in about an hour in the nightly live stream, which is returning today. And thank you for dropping by. If you have to my unboxing earlier in the day, I have missed you. Can't wait to be back with you in about an hour. Take care until then.